The Epilepsy Foundation acknowledges the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation as the traditional owners of the land on which this property stands. We respectfully recognise elders both past and present.
My name's Margaret Jarvis. I'm an epilepsy educator with the Epilepsy Foundation, and I'm a registered nurse. Many people are unsure what to do for Seizure First Aid, so we'll spend a few minutes having a talk about that. And I'm going to start with a seizure that perhaps you haven't thought so much about, where a person can have seizure activity that is not convulsive, but their conscious state's been affected. They might be doing some unusual things as part of that seizure, but they're not fully conscious at the time. So it's important to still time that seizure, and not restrain the person either. They can't stop what they're doing. It's the seizure that's causing the activity that you're seeing. It's important also to ensure the person's safety, because their conscious state has been affected during this type of seizure presentation. They're not fully aware of their surroundings, so you need to make sure that they're safe in that environment. Continue to reassure the person until the seizure's finished. And while you're doing that too, you'd be wanting to gauge what their conscious state was. Have they returned to normal? So that would be the sort of approach to have if you were with somebody who was having a seizure where there was impaired awareness. The common seizure type we think of for first aid is convulsive seizure activity, and this is where a person would lose consciousness. If they were standing, they would fall to the ground and they would have jerking movements in some or all of their limbs. They're not responsive during this time, and we've got something we need to be doing for that. We need to time this seizure again from when you see it. When you first see it, you may not have been there at the start, but from when you have first recognised that seizure activity has happened till when the seizure finishes. Or you could ask somebody else to do that for you while you're looking after the person. If there's something soft you can place under their head, that would be a good idea, a pillow or some rolled up clothing. We're not going to restrain this person. Again, the person cannot stop the movements that are happening, and in fact you can cause more harm by restraining than you would by leaving them alone. So no restraining. Don't try and hold the movements so they don't hurt themselves, and importantly, don't put anything in the person's mouth. They might bite hard, and yes, they might bite their lip or their cheek or their tongue, but it's dangerous for you to try and put something into their mouth that can cause further harm. We want to make sure too that the area around the person is safe. So if there are objects that can be safely removed, do that. Or you might be able to pad some areas and make them not so prone to injury if the person were to hit that with a limb. We also want to get the person into recovery position as soon as possible. So you don't need to wait until the seizure has finished if it's possible to move them earlier. And people's movements will differ, or they'll vary depending on the seizure itself, maybe the size of the person. So whenever it's possible to safely put them into recovery position, do that. Continue to talk to the person. We're not sure what they will be able to hear during the seizure time, even though they are unconscious. So appropriate reassuring talk, and also gauging whether when the movements have stopped, whether they have regained consciousness. And you would stay with the person until you hand it over. Either they've recovered on their own and they're able to respond to you normally, or you may have had to call an ambulance or somebody else who can come to their assistance. There would be times when you would need to call an ambulance. That would be if the person wasn't known to you and they were having a seizure, or they may be known to you but they've never had a seizure before. There isn't an epilepsy management plan in place for them. Another time it would be necessary to call the ambulance would be if the seizure continued for longer than 5 minutes. That person would need medical attention for a seizure of that duration. Another circumstance would be if the person was injured as part of the seizure. Maybe when they fell, they've hit their head and they actually need medical attention for the injury. And some other circumstances where an ambulance should be called would be if the seizure occurred in water. If the woman was pregnant, in case the seizure was something to do with a pregnancy rather than with epilepsy. So hopefully that's given you some good tips on what to do for somebody who's having a seizure, either where the conscious state has been impaired but they're not unconscious, or for a convulsive seizure where somebody has lost consciousness during the seizure and they're convulsing.
Hi, my name's Rheana. I'm a support worker at the Epilepsy Foundation. I'm here today just to have a little chat to you about the Epilepsy Management Plan. This is a plan that can be developed specifically at this foundation for children and adolescents at primary or secondary college, although we do them for childcare, kinders as well. The plans are really simple and easy to use and are there basically to help teachers and carers of the children in those areas to support them should they have a seizure. The information provided on the Epilepsy Management Plan contains where the children's records are held, any triggers or behaviours that might indicate a seizure is going to occur, and then a brief description of each seizure the child may have and what to do in case of those seizures occurring. The information is brief, concise and to the point, and is there to, like I said previously, to assist the caregiver in ensuring the well-being of the child. If unsure at all times, always contact 000 if you're unsure. It also indicates on there if an emergency medication can also be given. But however, you must have training, and this can also be given to the staff of the school by our education and training staff. The Epilepsy Management Plan is reviewed by the parent or the caregiver or guardian of that child or person. Then changes are made as required. It is then reviewed and endorsed by the neurologist, preferably. However, any paediatrician or GP can do that as well. In the development of the Epilepsy Management Plan, the support worker can work with the guardian or family member in developing that plan. It works on those that have seen the seizure type and can give a really detailed description of what the person or child looks like when they're having the seizure. This information is important as every individual seizure's presentations are very different, and it helps to work together as a team to ensure best outcomes for the child.